I am Flavia Beliani Zimmerman from the Australian Institute of International Affairs, and today we have with us Michael Wood. Michael Wood is a former DFAT officer and former Consul General in Chicago. Today we are going to be discussing world politics beyond Trump. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Flavia.
Mr. Wood, if you could explain to us, what were the leading factors allowing the rise of Donald Trump?
Right, I think if you go right back to the prime causes of Trump, you have to understand that in a global sense as well, because my contention would be that Trump's rise is driven by similar factors to the factors that have led to other demagogic leaders such as Duterte of the Philippines or Bolsonaro of Brazil, Erdogan of Turkey. At the same time, we've seen Brexit and a dismantling of global coalitions. So Trump needs to be understood in that context. And I think I would identify two key forces at play here. And one is perhaps a little unexpected. I think that it is that the rate of change in society, certainly in my lifetime, has been so great that many individuals just find it too hard to keep pace. And they particularly find it hard to keep pace when it comes to their employment, jobs. When I started working, it was the assumption that where you start working, you probably finish working. Your career would be with one place and you would rise through it. And the stress involved in that was relatively modest. Now, the expectation is that you will not end up working where you start, and you'll have many changes, and you might be working on temporary contracts, and you won't know what's going to happen after the contract. And the level of stress is generally that much greater. And the ability of people to feel like they can deliver a better life for their children, the way I think historically we've always assumed we can, that's coming under challenge. So people are very stressed, and they're worried about who can help them. And at the same time, the other force has been globalization, where we have genuinely seen the benefits of globalization play out where you expect them to play out, in developing countries like China and India and Vietnam and the like, where people's incomes, on average at least, have risen extraordinarily. But what we should always have known is that globalization is a leveling force. And so those countries that were doing particularly well as a manufacturing country, like the United States, for instance, they find that they're no longer a competitive manufacturer. They lose jobs, in the case of the United States, to Mexico, to Canada, to China, to Vietnam. And people who are already stressed because of the rate of change I've described are now angry. They've lost their job, they can't send their kids to a good school, and they reach out for somebody who claims they can help. Donald Trump.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wood. And if you can please explain to us, in your opinion, how Trump's leadership style impacts American society and politics?
Well, I think above all else, he's a highly divisive leader, and he seeks to be. He has a style of leadership which appeals to his base in the United States. You talk about a political base, and his base is off to the far right. And it's part of the Republican Party's strategy generally to inflame the base and ensure that the greatest majority of their voters will turn out on election day and vote. They've left the middle behind. I mean, both sides of politics in the United States have left them behind. But what it means is that you should expect to see Donald Trump constantly seeking to energize his base with anger and resentment and division. And I think it's very damaging for the United States in the long run.
Thank you. And in your opinion, in the light of the Trump presidency, what are future political trends in America?
Well, that's extremely hard to predict. But if I go back to my basic principles here, the ones I've described to you, I don't think the rate of change is going to slow down. Artificial intelligence is going to, I think, change everything. And a lot of people, particularly people who don't have high levels of education, are going to find it very hard to keep pace and to stay ahead of the breaking wave. So I think you should expect to see ever-increasing levels of anxiety in US society and elsewhere, I should say. And I think you should expect to see demagogic characters like Donald Trump arising in the future. But my hunch is that you'll see US society lurching from side to side. I think there will be a response to Trump now. We'll probably go to the left. If the left can't deliver, though, then again, US voters will be saying, well, who can deliver us from this economic downturn and our narrowing fortunes?
Mm-hmm. And in your opinion, Mr. Wood, do you think, and take into account your experience in the US, do you think we are heading towards a second term of a Trump presidency?
So I doubt it. Historically, we should expect him to get a second term. That's normal. But he has always been divisive. When he got elected, he really only narrowly got over the line with the support of a number of factors. Things like the James Comey revelation about Hillary Clinton's emails just before the election, the alleged and I think likely support of the Russians with social media pushing chaos and disinformation that played into Trump's hands. Without those things, I don't think that Trump would have been elected then. Now, what we've seen since his election is he's been historically the most unpopular president since polling has been conducted in the United States, and it's been extremely stable. His lack of popularity, it's very hard to see how that's going to change going into the election next year. And I think that he seems to be, his unpopularity seems to be growing, if anything.
Thank you very much. And wrapping up our interview, if you could please reflect with us, what are the political leaders rising today in America that would have the ability to counter this narrative of misinformation and of hate promoted by Trump?
Well, there are a lot of political leaders, I would say, primarily on the left. Sadly, there are a few within the Republican Party, but on the left there are a new crop of politicians who are saying it as they see it rather than couching their terms in prepared talking points. They're taking risks. They are presenting policies which in the US context are very radical. Things like universal healthcare is a radical concept in the United States. They regard it as socialist, whereas in Australia we don't think we're socialist just because everybody has healthcare. So those people stand a chance of making a change in the way American people view politicians. But at the moment, Washington is at the lowest level of respect in all polls that it has ever been. People don't believe what their politicians are saying. So the people who are coming forward now have to build trust, and that's a long process.
Thank you. And in the Republican Party, do you think there is any signals of resistance towards the Trump narrative?
There are, but they are few. We've seen a number of resignations, not only out of the White House, but Paul Ryan, Speaker, resigned at an unexpected point in his career. We've seen some Libertarian members resign, but I think what's disappointing is that the Republican Party has been very silent in relation to Trump. They probably feel that he's their best chance of maintaining power at the presidential level, and that delivers things like the ability to nominate Supreme Court judges. It's extremely important to them, and that's I think their integrity has been a price they've been willing to pay.
Well, thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thanks, Flavia. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for being with us, and for more information, please visit our website www.internationalaffairs.org.au. Thank you.